You're listening to Skills World Live with Tom Buick. News, views, and interviews in association with FE News. Welcome back live. We've had a few technical difficulties, but hopefully the editor of the show will send me a text or a little message shortly to let me know he's hearing us loud and clear. So I'm going to hand over to Kirsty Donnelly, who will take on the next segment, hashtag Stand Up for Skills. Over to you, Kirsty.
Thanks, Tom. I'm hearing you loud and clear. All good. So Frank is now going to speak for exactly 7 minutes and 46 seconds, which is the now known exact amount of time revised today that police officer knelt on George Floyd's neck. Frank, over to you.
Thank you, Kirsty, for having me and giving me this slot. I always say when someone asks me to speak, it's caveat emptor. You never know what I'm going to speak about. And so thanks for trusting me with this. As Kirsty said, I haven't started the clock yet, but it will be for 7 minutes and 46 seconds, which is the revised time of George Floyd's knee on his neck. And I am starting the clock now. At this point, the knee went on his neck. As Kirsty mentioned, I was born in Mississippi. Mississippi is not a place that I would recommend as a starting point for anyone. It is the poorest country in the U.S., state in the U.S. then and now. It has the lowest reading average in the U.S., and it has amongst the lowest per capita income in the U.S. When my father was growing up there, it was also probably one of the most racist states in the U.S. As Kirsty said, it was the hotbed of the Ku Klux Klan. It had colored-only fountains, restaurants, hotels, train stations, water fountains. He grew up as a child picking cotton. He was drafted into the Marines. He was part of the first group of the Marines that were drafted. Blacks were not allowed to integrate into the main Marine Corps, so they had separate camps, separate bases. And he prepared in the Pacific training for the invasion of Japan, which, as you know, the alternative took place. We moved to the South Bronx, which in many cases is not necessarily a step up. It was the murder, rape, robbery, aggravated assault, arson capital of the U.S., and that's saying something. 40% of the South Bronx was burned or abandoned. My family worked hard, and we were the first Black family to move into a nice suburban neighborhood with 32 other houses and 31 other neighbors. Within 2 years, the neighborhood was all Black. All 31 neighbors, white neighbors, had moved away. I worked full-time during the day and went to night school, and you could say that was kind of an apprenticeship. 80% of my time was at the job and 20% was at school. Fast forward, and as Percy mentioned, I've been on the board of the CIPD and the City Guilds. And then there's the rather unique aspect to my career, which to me is still a puzzlement. As you know, the FTSE 250 is made up of the biggest 250 companies in the UK. For an HR professional, the pinnacle is typically the group HR director job. It is the highest role in the company. It typically sits on the management board. The FTSE 250's only ever in its history had 2 Black male group HR directors. Only 2 Black males have ever been the group HR director in the FTSE 250. I humbly say I've been both of them. That doesn't speak to me. That speaks to what are the issues in the UK about progression and retention of Black professionals in the country. So what is that to say? I have 2 asks of you I'm going to ask today, and that hopefully that little story, fast moving as it was, underpins my first ask. Is you have moments of truth with your students. And this is about you. This isn't about the government. This isn't about funding. This isn't about quals. This is about you. When you have that moment of truth with a student from a deprived background, in the hallway, in the cafeteria, in your office, you need to believe and you need to make them believe that their origin is not their destination. Their origin is not their destination. That is my ask of you, my first ask of you. But I also realized, so what did propel me from Jackson, Mississippi, and the barriers that I faced. And I realized it was my teachers, Miss Fine when I was in primary school, Mr. Rodriguez when I was in junior school. I had the fortune of going to what was called the High School of Music and Art, which you may know as the Fame School from the movie. I can't pick my leg up to my head. I was a trumpet player. But as we were talking earlier in the conversation, there was a conversation about leveling. And for me, Mr. Joseph, I didn't know it at the time, but he taught me the difference between equality and equity because I was from a poor background. So I didn't have private tutors. I didn't have those resources. I had an old beat up trumpet, which was probably out of tune by a quarter of a note, but I played it. But Mr. Joseph didn't give me the 30 minutes that every trumpet player and every music student would get for their tutorial. That would have been equality. But he knew I had less resources. He knew I had less access to music and teachers. So he gave me 90 minutes. That's equity. And that's really something that is very important in the education system, is to give those resources to those who need it most. So yes, 30 minutes would have been equality, but 90 minutes for me was equity. The other thing I realized, having been over here, is I've been asked quite a bit in the last 3 weeks, is it different over here than the US? And you take away the violence, and maybe on the macro level it is, but it's not. For a Black person, you're still likely to be unemployed. You're still likely to have a high level of stop and search. You're still likely to be more likely to be arrested. You're still more likely to be denied bail. You're still more likely to be imprisoned. And as we've seen, you're still more likely to die from COVID. So the issue is, you as educators and leaders, what is my second ask? My second ask is that sense that we're not asking for anything more than anything else. What we have is hopes and dreams. What we need is encouragement. We need that hand on our shoulder, that pat on the back, those non-financial rewards that make a difference in the workplace, in schools. Miss Fine, my primary school teacher, told me once after a test, she said, "You got the highest mark in the class." And she said, "If you keep studying hard, you're going to make something of yourself." Now, I don't know, if that was true, if she was just making that up. But, I come to realize, that sense of self-fulfilling prophecy. We think of it from a negative point of view, in the studies that show if you're in the operating room and the doctor kind of whispers, "Ooh, I don't think they're going to make it out of this," chances are you may not make it out of that surgery. But Miss Fine said that to me. And to this day, decades later, I still remember Miss Fine, when I was 6 years old, and I still remember her saying that. Did that propel me? I don't know. But I do know that those moments of truth, when you come across the students, when you're with them, they have hopes and dreams. I would like you to encourage their hopes and dreams. I would like you to help them dream. I would like you to remind them that their origins is not their destination. Black men live in a world of a narrative that constantly says they can't. All around them, the narrative is they can't. The one skill I would like you to give them is that narrative that says they can. They can. That's what I would like. George Floyd took his last breath. Thank you.
Wow, Frank, so powerful. Thank you. I mean, the Black Lives Movement has all been about listening and acting. And Frank, you've just given us in 7 minutes and 46 seconds as listeners a very deeply, emotionally heartfelt, human story of your own. And with those two very, very important asks as educators, as anyone playing a role in society and employment, to create those hope and dreams and to make sure that we don't reinforce a negative message of origin is not about your destiny, and that you can actually have a narrative of you can. Thank you so much, Frank, for being with us tonight and taking over the mic. I'm so glad I handed my Stand Up for Skills segment mic to you, and back to you, Tom. Powerful stuff.
Thanks, Kirsty. Extremely powerful indeed. I was thinking hashtag stand up for humanity there. I think what Frank said was incredibly moving. Thanks to him. And of course, thanks to you for, handing over the mic and allowing, I think, a show like this, which inevitably, has been talking a lot about statistics and government reports, has ended, I think, in exactly the way it should, which is bringing everything down to a very human level. Thanks to you both. Thanks, Kirsty. See you again next week.
Yeah, see you soon. Thanks, Tom. Thanks,
Right.
everybody. Thanks, Frank.
Thank you.
Wow. These weekly shows just seem to get more and more interesting and powerful. If you've got suggestions for what topics we should be covering in your world FE, then please do email us, skillsworld@fenews.co.uk. Make sure you tell your friends too about Skills World Live and ask them to subscribe at one of their favourite podcasting sites, or even just take a listening playback on fenews.co.uk/skillsworld. Indeed, they can join over 14,000 listeners that have already enjoyed the programme in this way so far. On next week's show, we'll be focusing on the adult skills agenda with the Minister, Gillian Keegan, and guest contributors, including the Chief Policy Officer at the ALP. I couldn't broadcast this programme without the help of the editor, Gavin O'Mara, and of course, our digital producer, Ellie Hansen. Big thanks to them. Skills World Live is supported by the Federation of Awarding Bodies Platinum Partners Programme. Playing you out now with this track, Aries. It's called Dio. Goodbye.
You're listening to Skills World Live with Tom Buick. News, views and interviews in association with FE News.